Hello, Teresa Phelps Martin with Soulfully You, bringing you the energetic signature for Gemini season. Guess who's a Gemini? Yours truly. Who else? Tell me, put it like, add, do something. Tell me if you're also a Gemini. I'm going to start here because it's personal. Every archetype, right? Every sort of energetic signature that kind of helps us animate our life, right? That's what we can use the zodiac signs to help us understand patterning and ways of being. There's like two sides of the coin, right? That's what acceptance and commitment therapy would say. There's the duality. In that duality, there is the non-dual. So it's like with the dark and light, the sun, the moon, the earth, the solar system. That's not really a duality, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like masculine, feminine, awake, asleep, day, night, summer, winter, spring, fall. They're the same, but they're different, okay? And so there can be a higher octave of it, a higher vibration of it, a better pure sattvic inner expression of it, or it could be rajasic and tamasic, right? Where it's misaligned. Gemini, to all my fellow Geminis, we get called out for talking too much, being two-faced, and jokesters, right? Manipulators, jokesters. We're really the magician, okay? We're also the jester. Maybe we're not the magician. Maybe I just feel like a magician. But anyhow, the Gemini energy is this glyph where you have the Roman numeral 2, right? So there's that, do not think it's the number 2, okay? But it is the idea of these parallels, what goes as above, so below. And the ability to connect to that higher vision and in the moment. So for example, if I'm sitting with two people, I can see both points of view, right? It's the ability to say, well, I understand your perspective and I understand your perspective. That's being neutral, right? It's being able to transmit what isn't being said and give it a voice, okay? And Gemini energy is also about commerce, the exchanging of energy, the exchanging of the unmanifest to the manifest, the idea to fruition, right? And that commerce is that ability to receive energy in exchange for your offering. This is the idea of Gemini. This is the idea. Now, where it comes in personally, if you are Gemini, I recommend learning your chart. I recommend understanding and tracking the energy of the skies. It makes such a difference. As a matter of fact, I was in a conversation with somebody. She had a wonderful experience, but she traveled during the eclipse, and I'm sure other people did. All kinds of people traveled to Louisville, right, for the Derby. So anyhow, somebody suggested after the fact, well, don't travel during an eclipse. And it was funny. And the long story short, because Geminis have difficulty with brevity unless they don't talk at all. They could also be so shy, but that tells me that there's something else in the chart as well. Like, for example, my son is in the 8th house. Okay, my voice was buried very, very deep, and it actually took a few like chaotic and points of crisis. I mean, it was life or death really for my voice to come forward. All right, so if hearing that bothered you, just exhale all the way out and remember to breathe in again. Gemini energy rules the lungs. Okay, so we want to be able to breathe into the moment, just like I started telling you that story. The summary of that story is that it's good to know what the planets are doing. I am not planning a trip to be camping when Neptune's about to go retrograde. I know, it's kind of crazy, right? It'll be the week before 4th of July, just so you know. So we're going to have more water because that's just a pattern that keeps happening. And you can all blow this off as a bunch of hogwash and woo-woo stuff, or you can pay attention. You could even pick up the Farmer's Almanac, because believe it or not, all that information comes from the heavens above. Thank the heavens for this amazing insight and guidance that it passes down to us. And Gemini energy is about being able to be in communication and in collaboration and working with what's given. Okay? Do we have a kind of abstract but good idea of what Gemini energy is all about? So the low side of Gemini, just to remember, is that it's two-faced because it's so indecisive, right? I'll guarantee you, usually people are two-faced because they don't know how to face themselves, right? And there's much more at stake here than just trying to hurt your feelings. They're flaky, they just can't commit, right? That is that dysregulation, if you will. I'm not using that in the best of way, but if we're not breathing all the way in and we're not breathing all the way out, are we really living? Well, clearly we are, because I guarantee you I haven't paused since before starting this to breathe all the way in and to breathe all the way out, and I'm still functioning. But in that, we want to feel the value of the breath, the value of, right, that duality of an inhale and an exhale, but they come together to create the breath. You cannot have the inhale without the exhale. You cannot have the exhale without the inhale. The very first thing you do once you individuate is breathe in on your own. The very last thing you do in this life is exhale all the way out. So it's profound and obvious, right? Okay. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit of what Gemini is. And all the Geminis out there, whether you have a Gemini moon, a Gemini sun, a Gemini rising. We are the ones who really help connect things. We're curious, and so we go investigate and we communicate. I think I've moved into a profession now as a counselor where I help, especially adolescents, find their voice and speak their insides out, because at that time, everybody's always told you where to be, how to be, and what to do. And then all of a sudden your brain expands and you have hormones that you're like, whoa, I feel all kinds of other things. What are these other feelings? That's all water energy, because it has to do with the hormone and endocrine system, which is all related to, the emotional landscape, which is associated with the water signs. So speaking of water signs, we are starting Gemini season with this very dreamy and intuitive energy of the sun, when it was in Taurus, having an aspect to Neptun. Okay, so this is like as a matter of fact, when I'm recording this, is in kind of that heightened energy of that in connecting to your intuition. And so we have that energy carrying us into Gemini season when the sun moves into Gemini, which happens at 3:10 a.m. Eastern Time, Sunday, May 21st, 2023. We have the signature of really tapping into your creativity, your imagination, your soul's guidance, like your insides, the depth of you, that energy that brought you here, however you decide to define our experience here on Earth, the energy that brought you here, and that guidance that's directing you, right? So I do live by the planets and the signs. I do not have a sophisticated enough skill set to live and breathe by every transit personally in my own life, like my own personal chart. However, I am tuned in to my chart very well. So I'm very tuned in to the fact that I have a Jupiter in Taurus. So that's part of what's carrying us into Gemini season, because Jupiter is in Taurus. I'm very tuned in to the fact that I have a Pluto in the 12th house in Libra. So there's this duality energy again. Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius are all air signs, and they're all there in relationship, right? One is just in the intimate right here, inner world, outer world, if you will, the environment in which you bring your insides outward. Libra energy is more of that energy of relationship with others, right? Like your relationship that connects with other individuals and other beings. And then Aquarius is the bigger picture, right? So we have that other signature that's really strong as Gemini season begins is Mars opposite Pluto. Okay, so I'm coming to you recording this after the sun was sextile Neptune. That's a big, strong earth energy of Taurus in a sextile with Neptune, which is a signature that actually ignited the new moon that's in Taurus. The moon will be in Gemini when we move into Gemini season. But the lunar pattern is reversed after the eclipses, that Aries eclipse in Aries season. And so we had the full moon. Remember the full moon eclipse in, Scorpio? The sun was in Taurus. The moon was in Scorpio. And so now we have a new moon in Taurus. So the full moon happened before the new moon during this lunar cycle, during the zodiacal cycle. So it's interesting because the moon is in Taurus. So how can you carry over the new moon energy with this intuition and giving it form, shape, and structure? It's a beautiful new moon. If you're watching this early in Gemini season and you haven't done any kind of new moon ritual, it was a great moon to sit and contemplate and then put forward intentions. So you always have permission to initiate something new, right? There are better times than others though. And that's why you track the transits. All right. So we're starting Gemini season with this like sweet new moon in Taurus. That's favorable, right? Like there's no hard aspects. Mercury's not retrograde. We do have Pluto squaring Jupiter, which is a little tension, but I can already list out a bunch of, oh, that's Jupiter square Pluto. Oh, that's Jupiter square Pluto. Pluto's in the sign of Aquarius, already retrograde. So Pluto, it's all the big deal in astrology world, but Pluto ingressing into a new sign because it takes so long to move around the zodiac. Nobody who's living on planet Earth has ever experienced Pluto in Aquarius. That's kind of a big deal, right? And so we've had this glimpse of what is it that Pluto in Aquarius is going to do? And now Pluto in Aquarius is going back into Capricorn later this summer. And Jupiter is squaring Pluto for the first time. So it's kind of like we've had to change structures, right? The last time Pluto and Jupiter had a huge aspect together was in Capricorn. Right? It was in Capricorn before, like of 2020. Whew, right? Exactly. So we can kind of remember what happened in 2020. The world changed. The stage in which the world is operating has shifted. Now, all of a sudden, COVID no longer is an ordeal in the United States of America. It's just like a cold. All restrictions have been lifted. And so now we're hitting the square. So now we're going to get back to like, oh shit, this is what needs, excuse my language. This is what needs to be addressed. But if we can address what is sitting under the surface for our future, there will be benevolence. We have to see the good, right? Back to Gemini season. Gemini can see both sides. You want to put all your energy into what isn't working? Watch the news. Don't leave your home. Be paranoid and scared and decide that the universe is a hateful and miserable place. Or connect to people and individuals that are around you that matter. And I'll tell you why in a moment. That matter. Value them. Ask them for their wisdom. See what is working. Find the appreciation. Lean into the abundance. like you have running water. It's clean. And don't get all like, it's not clean. Go to the Ohio River and try to drink water from there. The water that comes, well, for those of us who are in Kentucky, the water that water ain't clean. Maybe Jupiter and Taurus will help us come back to, wow, remember that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction? Everything slowed down. There were all kinds of, hype that there were pink flamingos in New York City or something extreme like that, right? But it was like a Earth reset. Can we come back to the resources of our beautiful Earth and care for it? So we have this square happening. Anytime a planet's in relationship with Jupiter, it's not horrible. Okay, it's not horrible. The hard part of quarantine was when Saturn conjunct Pluto. That's when it got tough. Okay, so we have that signature, and I'm circling back. We have the signature of Mars opposing Pluto, which is it ain't fun. Mars and Pluto can be violent, harsh, and mean. Mars will have entered into Leo. So Mars is sextiling the sun. So we can be confident. We can have enthusiasm. We can be inspiring. We can be encouraging. And the sun is trining Pluto. So we can have drive and determination. I wrote it down. Did I? Yes. That we can trust all is in order. So just understand that we have this harsh aspect as part of the signature, energetic signature of starting this month, but it's wrapped in support and ease, which brings me back to this new moon in Taurus that happened right before Gemini season began. And when the sun ingressed into Gemini, the moon was in Gemini. So the moon is just a little bit ahead. So if you wanted to watch the transits of the moon, that's like the daily post I put in the Soulfully You Facebook group. Man, I would love to make that as like an app you could sign up for. If anybody knows how to do it, let me know. I'll provide the content. You can create the app. That comes from the major transits and the dance of the moon. What is the moon doing that day? I don't just like spontaneously come up with these insights. It is me communicating the guidance of the heavens above. So it would be beneficial to track the moon. So maybe I'll give a little energy to that to wrap this up. And as that moon tracks, the moon is just ahead of Gemini. Just ahead the sun entering Gemini, right? So the moon is going to kind of carry the message faster, and then the sun's going to come and illuminate it. So as the sun transits through Gemini, it's really helpful to know, you can just think of storylines that have happened since 2020. Because Venus was retrograde in Gemini in 2020. And then we had Mercury retrograde in Gemini in 2021. And then we have Mars retrograde in Gemini in 2022. Those are the personal planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars are the ones that are personal. They are close to the Earth, right? Mercury and Venus are between the Earth and the sun, and Mars is just on the outside of Earth. They're personal. Then you have the huge asteroid belt where all the goddesses dwell. And then we have Jupiter, which is further out, in Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn are the social constructs of expansion and contraction. And then we have the transpersonal, the planets that impact everybody. Neptun, Uranus, and Pluto. So everybody is experiencing the Jupiter-Pluto square. Everybody is experiencing the sun sextile Neptune, the intuitive hits. Everyone is experiencing the Oh, Mercury is sextile Saturn moving into this too, but it's pretty separating. And Mercury's no longer retrograde, so Mercury's going to speed up. It's like the sun left it behind, and Mercury's like, oh, no, 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 no. I can't get that far away from you because you radiate and illuminate the messages of life. So I need to be close by so I can help transmute them or translate them to all those beings that are living on this planet. But we all have our own way of dialogue, and Mercury being in Taurus will, shoot, I forgot to look at that. Mercury being in Taurus will ask that we tune into the wisdom, that we seek the knowledge, especially of elders, especially of those that have gone before. Mercury goes into Gemini on June 11th. Okay, so we have a lot of Gemini season with Mercury in Taurus. It's kind of sweet. This Gemini season is unique for me. I have a lot of natal returns. My Jupiter's in Taurus. That's as far as I can get. Mercury's in Taurus. My Jupiter, my Mercury are in Taurus. Mars is in Leo. My Mars is in Leo. This is all about me all of a sudden. Okay, so knowing your chart so you can know how this will impact. But Mercury is going to be revisiting. So listen to what's being said. This is really important, which is why I just paused and came back to this moment. If you can use your breath to bring you back into the moment, if you can acknowledge where you are, what you've been learning for the past 3 years, because, I mean, let's face it, if you haven't accepted that COVID was a reset, then you're in denial. Okay? Because what it did, it uprooted our lives as we knew them. All right? So in that, we've learned a lot of lessons personally. Venus, Mercury, and Mars have all gone through Gemini retrogrades. So they've danced over spots in Gemini 3 times. Now the sun is going to come through and illuminate that. The sun is how we shine. The sun is how we illuminate things. Because this is happening in Gemini, the sun is going to want us to listen to what's being said. We also want to use Gemini season to respect the challenges that we face because we're trusting our intuition, because we're choosing to be more mindful, because challenges are how things manifest. There's no magic wand, right? I think that's what I love about looking to astrology as my tool of intuition, is because there are relationships of all kinds. Subtle, sweet, loving, easy, opposing, complete opposite of like exposing that duality immensely. And then like out of sight, like you can't see it at all. So the only way we can grow is through that. And then what ways are you collaborating? Right? What ways are you looking at this? Like if Mercury is the communicator, right? The articulator, the messenger. How are you listening to what's being said and pausing to just sit with? Tap in, get into your body. Please, don't stay in your mind. Get into your body and breathe into it. And if it feels really good, then you'll take action. You'll take action with enthusiasm. Okay? So are you taking, like, wisdom is the knowledge and experience together, right? So you want to have time of reflection, and that will let you lean in and slow down and pause, let the earth rise up to meet you, and then you can take action and drive and bring that passion forward. So be mindful of your process. Know that there's been so much change. And how are you working with all this energetic shifting? Even with yourself, even with the insights that have come forward. Look at where you are socially. What's accepting? How have we become more accepting of slowing down, right? How are we able to receive the guidance that's available to us? And how are we truly changing the narrative? I mean, I've changed my narrative. I am always a yoga teacher. I am not teaching public yoga classes. I am reclaiming my practice for myself. It's been an amazing thing. I try to get on the mat for 30 minutes a day, all mine, mainly for self-care, for strength, for all the beautiful benefits that yoga holds. But I'm reclaiming it for me. And in that sort of place, how are you moving forward with this new vernacular? Like, how are you taking the language and the vocabulary and the insights that you've gained about yourself, right? Soulfully you, I'm not talking about global things right now. I'm talking about you, the individual. How are you taking these and how are you moving them that they support like the environment right around you, like your home, your neighbors, your community? Because if we can care for our minds, our lives, like our mind, body, spirit, and soul, that's to me really the number one, then we can contribute to the lives that we are intimate with, and then we can care about the community. Sometimes we have to take care of the community to even feel like we can get into our mind, body, spirit, and soul. All right. That is the energetic signature. That is the overarching theme, right? That we can be versatile. We can adapt. Gemini season is the end of spring. I know it feels like the beginning of summer, right? But Gemini season is the end of spring. We have the summer solstice happening in June. We have this energy, and while that's like, I've talked a lot, so I'm yawning to slow down. Are we giving ourselves a chance to breathe into the cells of our being? And when you breathe in, can you really honor that sacred spark? That you have this altar of the heart, right? That's now coming and engaging and articulating, is curious about stepping out. So with the moon being in Gemini, we're going to get a lot of new ideas because we have that energy, that fading energy of the sun sextile Neptune, of our intuition. So listen, maybe you don't take action on them yet, but you write them down. Mercury is going to be in Taurus. I mentioned that. So what have you learned? And are you seeking out wisdom? Are you taking the knowledge from the experience and calling forward the wisdom? Or are you so attached to what you think it should be versus all the things that they are? I mean, I feel bad for people who aren't willing to open their hearts and minds, because they're just making their own lives miserable, and unfortunately making it miserable for other people as well. They don't have to lose themselves. They do not have to lose their beliefs, just like I don't. I have my ideas, but how do I stay neutral? It's hard. I can see both sides. All right. But are you seeking that wisdom from those who have gone before? Like, think about that idea of listening to a story. Or I've had this experience of working so much with preteens, and part of my energy I show up with is I survived middle school. It was junior high when I went there. That's how old I am. They called it junior high, which I think is better. But I survived, right? So I can take that wisdom and share it with them. And what would have helped me, right? What's helping them? And unfortunately, what would have helped me is all these evidence-based practices that are available if you work with a therapist, that mental health matters. It's like such a big deal. That's such a big deal of this Gemini season. How about I stop there? This is just such the powerful signature of that. We're not here to figure it all out by ourselves. So utilize that network. And that's what Mercury in retrograde is all about. Interesting that Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Who didn't have things break down? Cars, appliances, technology. I had so many technology glitches that I even laughed. I was able to laugh. That's the idea of tracking. You don't take it so personally. When you are tracking the transits in the heavens, you can sit back and like, this is beyond my control. This is beyond what I can do anything about. But what I can do about is ground, lean back, breathe, and trust that it's all going to work out. Venus will be in Cancer. Venus being in Cancer, the signature, what's important about this signature is that it's really about caring about your home life, of course, valuing it, investing in it, utilizing the resources of that home, appreciating your home, all these things. But what came to me intuitively is also valuing the wisdom, right? Once again, the wisdom of the feminine, the wisdom that's guiding us, that we can find the pleasure and comfort. We can seek support from women, from the compassionate energy of our lives, that those that encourage us and can help you learn how to mother yourself, right? I know that's odd, but you have the ability to mother yourself. You're tired. You probably need to get your blood flowing. With Mars in Leo, I'll jump there real quick. With Mars in Leo, get your heart beating. Get your heart beating during Gemini season. Breathe fresh air. Pump blood through your being so that you can carry the oxygen, right? This is Gemini too, that you can carry the oxygen and it can be transported throughout for the vitality. That's mothering yourself, right? Value, allow for self-compassion, allow for self-empathy. It's not really a term yet, probably will be once I pass. Because self-empathy is what people who have severe trauma do not know how to connect to their own feelings and be gentle with them because they've had to shut down, right? It's just part of, it's actually for some people I've heard, it's the last step of, well, I differ with this notion that it's the last step of PTSD. But it's being able to feel safe enough. Right? Being able to feel safe enough to feel. So that's Venus in Cancer. Like, value the safety you have. Cancer energy is all about being safe. Can you bring safety out of the past? Can you make peace? Can you value that your story, the journey you've been on, is worthy? And Mars in Leo, well, that's about expressing your creative side of being confident, not so much dramatic, but confident. Might come off intimidating, but maybe you can just try to be inspiring. We have Jupiter and Taurus, which I've spoken about, but Jupiter and Taurus is the capacity for wisdom. It's gonna, the capacity for wisdom to expand. That there is abundance, that you deserve abundance, that every being has a goodness. Sometimes they've just inherited so much pain, they can't escape the pain, so they could continue the pain. And the pain never goes away. But part of that abundance is knowing that there's help to support you in that pain. And that you can really embrace the moments of joy, the moments of abundance that aren't about your bank account. Snarky humor is Gemini quality. Jupiter in Taurus is all about connecting with those who are loyal, right? And that are willing to teach you what you need. And being taught what you need is not always enjoyable, but it's there. So are we noticing this like reoccurring theme that the planets are giving us, this reoccurring energy of collaborate, connect, communicate? But there's this other layer of the feminine wisdom, the intuition, the creativity of taking care of yourself. And then Saturn's in Pisces. Saturn will go retrograde in Pisces this month. You want me to tell you the exact date? Does it really matter to you? It will, because we're going to go back and look at kind of the stuff that's been uncovered. The bigger issues of our volatile states is how I'd like to say we're going to be uncovering. Saturn will go retrograde on June 18th. Oh yeah, I always forget that. It's my son's birthday. It's going to be something, because Saturn will be at 7 degrees. My son's Neptune's at 7 degrees, and his moon is at 6 degrees Pisces. It's going to be interesting. So I'm actually relocating him for his solar return so we can shift the energy a little bit. My husband just thinks it's, actually he's good with it. I told him it was probably going to rain and I don't want to go camping while it's going to rain. But I haven't told him the part about I'm relocating him and my son for their solar returns to help us with our year ahead. And it just works out. It'll be the summer solstice. So why not? Why not be in the place of beauty and space and enjoyment as a family? So yeah, June 18th. Uranus will continue to be in Taurus. Neptune will continue to be in Pisces, and Pluto will continue to be in Aquarius until, I knew I needed to pull that one out. Pluto will move back into Capricorn, which is actually kind of a big deal, on June 11th. No, or June 12th. Depends on where you live. It's like right at midnight. So there's just a lot of energy around this. We will be able to notice. Everybody's going to feel something. It's not bad. But just these are like, what I would do, or I do, is just circle these dates on my calendar so that you kind of know, you're just aware. So that if something comes up, it's like, for me, it's part of the way I regulate. It's like, okay, like something happened today. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I'm all the way over here, where usually this kind of stuff happens over here, but it's happening over there. I'm not over there. That's where I usually am. So it reminded me of, like, it doesn't matter where you are. It's happening to all of us. And there's a lot of patterns of that. So you can just kind of notice the patterning, like, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, that reminds me. I can be aware of all these things. This moon, okay, I'm going to finish up. I know this one's long. It's Gemini season, though. There's no brevity around Gemini. That, if you're still listening to this, I appreciate it. It is about the moon, and I'll unpack it briefly, and then I'm in the mood, so maybe I'll create a moon forecast real quick. So the moon will be new before, right? We're moving into Gemini season with a new moon signature. So that means all this stuff that's going to come out. Remember, I said it's planting seeds. The moon is going to transit. If the moon's in Gemini, I'll just give you the rundown. I feel like somebody that's watching this really wants to know. So the moon will be in Gemini, and then it moves into Cancer, okay? And then come May 24th, the moon will enter Leo, and then come May 26th, The moon will enter Virgo like late at night. That tells me there's probably a long void, of course. Moon on the 27th. The moon is in Virgo until May 29th. The moon is in Leo. And then on June 1st, the moon will be in Scorpio on the south node, just so you know. That might be something to pay attention to. I'm just gonna do that other video, okay? Which you will have already watched because I'll post it before this one. The moon will go through Scorpio and then it will enter into Sagittarius on June 3rd. The moon will enter Capricorn on June 5th. It will enter Aquarius on June 7th. It will enter Pisces on June 9th. It will enter Aries on June 11th. It enters Taurus on June 13th. It enters Gemini on June 15th. We'll have that new moon in Gemini. I'm going to go backwards now. The new moon in Gemini will happen on June 18th. So that's something interesting. The new moon in Gemini will happen on June 18th when Saturn stations retrograde. So again, important to notice the stories that are unfolding, because I do think this is part of the storyline. That Saturn going retrograde, the new moon. And then the rest of Gemini season, the moon will move into Cancer on June 21st. And when the sun enters Cancer, the moon will be in Leo. So we'll have that sort of like precipice of the moon guiding us along the way. The full moon, which I've totally left out and gotten away from. I feel like there's so much out there in technology land that talks about the moons that I don't have to give you all of that. I try to give you the overarching signature of Gemini season. But the full moon will happen on, oh, look at that, June 3rd. Like almost close to like late, almost like midnight. So it could be, just realize that. Always pay attention to your time zone. I always do this in Eastern Standard Time. So just remember the insights and the downloads that are coming, anchor them, write them out, right? Gemini season is all about writing. Listen to the stories, listen to the lessons that are coming up. Remember what happened in 2020, 2021, 2022, with when Venus was retrograde, Mercury was retrograde, Mars was retrograde. Tune into those energies and those patterns and those storylines, because Mars just came out. I'll just make it easier for you. Mars just came out of retrograde, right? Mars finally left Gemini. So we're looking at the storyline of March, of December, and last August. If you can remember things that were coming up, that you're going to pay attention to that, because now the sun's going to highlight those storylines and patterns. Venus was in Gemini in May and June of 2020. And Venus will be in Gemini again this summer once Venus moves into Leo, which happens on June 5th. And then Venus will be retrograde later in the summer. She travels through almost all of Leo, and then she'll start her retrograde, I think, in July. So that's it. Pay attention to those storylines. Pay attention to your life. Pay attention to your soul. Give yourself moments of being present. Like if you don't like the word mindful, then use the word present. Bring yourself to this present moment and breathe into it. Expand your lungs on the horizon. Lean into the space behind your heart. Feel anchored into a strength and a capacity that you can carry forward the wisdom that is being offered to you. and that you're able to collaborate and connect and move forward with what is working. It's not about denying what isn't, it's just not getting hooked. You don't want to just stay in that loop again and again and again. So we learn how to move towards what is aligned with our values, what really matters, and how are we carrying these lessons and this ability to be present to our own self in this moment in a way that we're improving. We're actually just expanding the landscape that we know we can step into, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. Like, I feel like that is the signature of Gemini season. It is also just, for me, that signature of the work that I do. I do have brief availability to do soul sessions. They are $88. Soul sessions are coaching where we can look at your chart, or we do not need to look at your chart. But soul sessions, because soul sessions are about your emotional well-being. And if you can be emotionally well, you can care for all the states of your being, then you can be exactly who you're meant to be and become even more of who you dreamed of being. Does that make sense? I thank you for tuning in. I will be back for Cancer season, which is also really important to me. And I have a Cancer moon. And just know that if you want to reach out, I love it when you all let me know of something that's going on in your life. So huge shout out to those of you who take the time to share with me how this helps, how this is supportive. To those of you who have told me what they want more of, to those of you who have trusted me enough to book sessions and work with me. It is an honor, because what you reflect back to me is what I see in you. I get this privilege of witnessing you become everything that I know you can be, and I see in you, and I know I'm not the only one. But there's a resonance that happens and that awakens and gives you permission. The invitation is easy to accept when you feel safe to step into those areas of yourself that deep down you know are there. And then the best part is you take this out and you share it and you spread it, and it becomes contagious, and it allows other people to care for themselves as well. So until next time, I appreciate you. I adore this life, and it's precious to me that you choose to adore the life you're living as well.